January 12, 1782. Austrian Emperor Joseph II announces another of his groundbreaking reforms across the Habsburg Monarchy. Following the abolition of serfdom and the legalization of religious tolerance the previous year, the next radical step is the dissolution of monasteries. This does not apply to all monasteries in the empire, but only to those that Joseph considers useless to the state, those that do not provide education, healthcare, or scientific activities. After many centuries of existence, nearly half of the monasteries are forced to close. Their monks are given the option to emigrate, join other orders, or receive a lifelong pension. This revolution does not go unanswered. In March, Pope Pius VI arrives in Vienna and angrily asks if Joseph has gone mad. But the emperor remains firm. He believes the age of reason has come, where every step must serve efficient rule and improve the lives of his subjects. This idea will shape his life and, as we will see, lead him to his grave too. Joseph was born in 1741 as the fourth child of Austrian Empress Maria Theresa and her husband, Francis of Lorraine. However, as the first son, he was raised from an early age to one day succeed his mother as ruler of the Habsburg Monarchy and inherit the title of Holy Roman Emperor from his father. His upbringing, however, takes an unexpected turn. His father, far less rigid than Maria Theresa, introduces him to the Enlightenment philosophy of Rousseau and Voltaire, which argues that after centuries of religious oppression, an era of reason, science, and human free will must come. Joseph fully embraces these ideas and is determined from a young age to reform the state based on new knowledge. The problem is that his mother, a conservative woman, still firmly believes that her rule is granted by divine grace. His mother has different plans for Joseph. As part of her well-known marriage policy, she weds him at 19 to Isabella of Parma, a princess with ties to both the Spanish and French courts. Although the strong-willed Joseph resents the arranged marriage, he eventually falls in love with the charming Isabella. The couple has a daughter, fittingly named Maria Theresa, but the marriage is not a happy one. Isabella develops a much stronger affection for Joseph's younger sister, Maria Cristina, which apparently turns into a passionate lesbian relationship. This love triangle drives Isabella into deep depression. She becomes apathetic and frequently speaks about death. She is expecting a second child, but while pregnant, she contracts smallpox. Some even claim she deliberately infects herself. After a premature birth, in which the second daughter dies, Isabella soon follows. Devastated, Joseph loses both his wife and child within days. Maria Theresa decides that the heir to the throne must remarry immediately, this time to Bavarian Princess Maria Josepha. The 24-year-old Joseph openly signals that this marriage will remain purely formal. It is said that the union is never consummated, and when Maria dies 2 years later, again from smallpox, Joseph shows no grief and does not even attend her funeral. However, the death of his only daughter, Maria Theresa, who dies of pneumonia at the age of 7, deeply shakes him. From then on, apart from occasional visits to Vienna's brothels, he abandons any personal life and dedicates himself fully to his main life mission, reforming the empire and the lives of its people. Under the pseudonym Count Falkenstein, he travels across Europe to study different forms of government and the living conditions of people. He discovers that Austria is 50 years behind in everything. In total, he covers 30,000 miles. Reportedly a record for that time. He goes to Paris, where he helps his sister Marie Antoinette, married to the future French King Louis XVI, deal with fertility issues. He visits Italy and Russia, but what impresses him most is Prussia, where its ruler, Frederick II the Great, organizes the state according to Enlightenment ideals. His admiration for Frederick enrages his mother, as Prussia is Austria's greatest enemy. After the death of his father in 1765, Joseph becomes Holy Roman Emperor, effectively becoming co-ruler with Maria Theresa. He finally wants to take action, but it is not easy. Maria Theresa frequently argues with her son, and critics say that in one wing of Schönbrunn, Joseph drafts a decree, only for his mother to overturn it in another. The Queen agrees only to practical changes that do not threaten the existing order. During her reign, a set of measures known today as the Theresian reforms is implemented, including unified criminal law, mandatory house numbering, and a major education reform establishing compulsory schooling. However, she stubbornly refuses the most fundamental changes concerning individual freedoms. She tells Joseph, "Introduce these after my death because I do not want to witness what you will cause." Maria Theresa dies in 1780 after 40 years on the throne. Despite their disagreements, Joseph mourns her sincerely. But now, with full control, he throws himself into a frenzy of work, governing for 12 to 18 hours a day. Over his 10-year reign, he issues more than 6,000 laws and decrees, an average of 2 per day, and he starts with full force. In October 1781, he issues the Toleration Patent, ending the Catholic Church's total monopoly. From now on, Lutherans, Calvinists, and Orthodox Christians are permitted to practice their faith and build their own churches, though only away from main roads and without towers. The decision, like all of Joseph's reforms, is also practical. It is not in the state's interest for Protestants, generally intelligent and hard-working people, to flee abroad. He also loosens restrictions on Jews. They are now allowed to pursue most common professions, study at universities, no longer have to wear the humiliating yellow badge, and can be addressed as Sir instead of simply Jew. The second decree, signed a month later in November 1781, goes even further. It abolishes serfdom, fundamentally reshaping the existing social order. People will no longer belong to the nobility. They will be free to move wherever they wish without their lord's permission. They will also be able to marry, study, or learn a trade without needing approval. Only the obligation of corvée labor remains in place. The abolition of serfdom brings far-reaching changes to the empire. Peasants begin migrating to cities in large numbers, where they work in emerging manufactories, paving the way for the Industrial Revolution. In the Czech lands, Czech-speaking rural populations start settling in predominantly German-speaking cities, initiating the process of national revival. But for Joseph, this is only the beginning. In February 1782, as mentioned earlier, he dissolves monasteries and announces a sweeping church reform. Among other measures, he reduces the number of religious holidays, of which there were nearly 150 per year, to increase the number of working days and thus boost state revenue. But he goes on. He changes tax laws so that the maximum tax burden is 30%. He establishes a land and property register known as the Josephine Cadastre. He mandates the use of permanent surnames, as people previously either had none or changed them multiple times. He reaffirms the earlier decision that German will be the sole administrative language and that everything will be governed from Vienna, as this is the most efficient approach. He creates a network of hospitals, maternity wards, orphanages, and institutions for the mentally ill. He argues that a healthy and content subject is more beneficial to the state than a sick and dissatisfied one, or worse, a rebellious one. For him, the welfare of the state comes first. It is an attempt at an enforced revolution from above, a system later called Enlightened absolutism, or simply Josephinism. As the saying goes, every change is for the worse. In the Habsburg Monarchy, so many changes have taken place in just a few years that a reaction is inevitable. The nobility rebels against the abolition of serfdom. The still powerful church opposes the dissolution of monasteries. Ethnic minorities resent the enforcement of German and Viennese centralism. The peasants struggle with the increased number of working days and fail to understand why the emperor is concerned with details such as banning burials in coffins to save wood. The alternative of burying bodies in sacks causes such outrage that it becomes the first reform Joseph II soon repeals. And it will not be the last. By the late 1780s, the monarchy is on the brink of collapse. Open revolts against the reforms break out in the Austrian Netherlands and Hungary, while in Vienna, commoners rise up due to soaring food prices. At the beginning of 1790, Joseph sits in his palace, repealing many of his reforms to save the empire from total chaos. In Hungary, he even withdraws all reforms, including those from his mother's reign. He is suffering from tuberculosis, utterly broken and alone. His closest ally and co-architect of the reforms, Count von Kaunitz, has distanced himself from him for 2 years. With no heirs, his successor is to be his younger brother Leopold. But from his Italian territories, Leopold refuses to come and support him. And so Joseph can only complain to his servants. The people feel unhappy under the rule of a monarch who has spent his entire reign trying to secure their happiness. On February 20th, 1790, at the age of 49, Joseph II takes his last breath. He chooses to be buried in a simple copper coffin, a stark contrast to the opulent tomb of his parents. The plain coffin bears only a cross and this sharp inscription: "Here lies a ruler who, despite his best intentions, could accomplish none of his plans."